everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Wisconsin Weather Experts. It's Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about today. I know eventually we're going to go to the East Coast, talk a lot about king tides, which have to do with the supermoon, as well as a potential weekend nor'easter. So we're going to head out east at some point. It's a busy show. Later on, we're also going to talk about the bird migration, which has been popping up on social media a lot in the last couple of days. Some interesting weather tidbits there that maybe you have not heard of. So stay tuned.
A lot of good topics. And, we're going to start off heading out furthest west, and that's going to be in Ireland. Check out this amazing video of a plane trying to land in the windy conditions. The Dublin airport experienced a lot of problems this past Friday as storms rolled through the area from Umberto.
Ooh,
the video
wow.
shows one flight attempting to land only to abort because of strong winds. Check this out here. I mean, it goes down and then nope.
Yeah,
going
you could see
right
it wiggling
back up.
too earlier.
I can't even imagine being inside. Now, a second flight did bounce off the ground during its landing. 115 flights were canceled and 18 inbound flights were diverted to other airports.
Oh, that is so scary.
Yeah,
the turbulence. Could you imagine?
Oh, no, and all you hope for is a good landing, right?
Right,
when you're
exactly.
on the plane.
Exactly, because the descent alone can be a little dicey there.
Especially with strong winds.
Yeah. All right, well, beautiful video from the sunrise this morning on Isle of Palms in South Carolina near Charleston. This is courtesy of Fox Weather, their reporter that's on the ground there. Now, the East Coast has been dealing with king tides, as you've heard about the past couple of days. I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but just some higher than normal tides. It has to do with the moon, but also they potentially could be dealing with this weekend a nor'easter. So the reporter I know is talking to a lot of people who were on the beach and just looking ahead to what could be kind of a really rainy and impactful weekend for the Carolinas and many parts along the East Coast. But the sunrise, always nice to see over the ocean, even if the waves are a little high.
Gorgeous, gorgeous shot.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're continuing, of course, to track some of the winds that are creating those higher tides that you just mentioned brewing. People living in the southeast region of the United States are already feeling the impact from these tides. Yeah. You mentioned that Fox's weather Katie Barron has the latest from South Carolina, so let's take a listen into what she has on it.
Coastal cities like Charleston are especially vulnerable to king tides because they sit so close to sea level. And residents say they've noticed the water here looking higher and murkier than usual.
The water level here is really high up. It's not normally like that, and there's been flooding. Not on Kennedy Street. It's pretty calm, but the streets around it, there's a lot of flooding. Normally with like any rain, there's flooding around here, just not where we live. It seems like there's like a current moving along the battery, which I've never seen before.
The high tides and showers already prompted some road closures in the city. I noticed minor flooding and ponding in low-lying areas, the usual hot spots locals know well. Residents say they're so used to flooding that blockades stay on street corners in anticipation of it.
It's been really gloomy for the past couple days. We had a storm roll through last week, and then all this weather, kind of a low pressure system, so it's been kind of rough out here. You got to expect it when you live here in Charleston. There's a lot of since we're under sea level, there's a lot of areas that just flood all the time, even if it's not storming. So there are a couple streets closed off. I noticed towards Lockwood, that's typically an area that floods, as well as some areas off of King Street.
With flooding a regular occurrence, construction is underway along the Battery seawall for a multi-million-dollar project that started in 2019. The goal to protect this city from flooding by raising and reinforcing this wall several feet higher. In Charleston, South Carolina, Katie Bird, Fox Weather.
That is such a beautiful area, too. If you're familiar, they have that beautiful park right, and you can see all the ships across the water. It's a really, really beautiful area and populated, too, especially with tourists. So good to hear that they're maybe taking the proper precautions for the future.
I agree. Well, some other people were taking proper precautions and helping out a little kitty cat. In Texas, Seguin PD and fire received a call about this cat being stuck in a storm drain. They used a ladder and crews were able to scale down the drain and quickly scoop up the little guy. Crews has since given him the name Toodles. Toodles is sadly missing one eye, but the police say that they'll get him medical support that he needs. He's been taken to the animal services, where sometime soon he will be available for adoption.
Oh, all good news there.
Well, I'm excited to hear some of the news of the fantastic weather we're going to have when the Brewers win tonight, right?
Right, exactly. And the game, remember, it is in Chicago, but we have nearly the same forecast here in Milwaukee as well as down south in Chicago. This is a view, a live picture, I should say, down south. You can see the sun is finally coming out. Now, I was periodically showing Chicago's live camera this morning during our newscasts, and there was a decent amount of cloud cover coming in off the lake. So at least this one, you can actually see Navy Pier there, is sunny. So it's going to be a pretty nice day today for baseball. So the game is right after 4 o'clock. 4:08 is that start time at Wrigley Field. Temperatures will be in the low 60s. We should continue to see sunshine down there, lighter northeasterly breeze. So overall, though, it is going to be cooler compared to the last couple of days that we've experienced here in Milwaukee. So even if you're going to a viewing party in Milwaukee, it might be a good opportunity to break out the Brewers sweatshirts, especially later on in the day, because we will have that lake breeze that'll keep us a bit cooler. Bigger picture shows a lot of quiet weather here in Milwaukee and Chicago. That boundary that we saw move through yesterday, that cold front yesterday evening, has now moved pretty far towards the south of us. So no issues for us. There is still some activity along the East Coast, especially New England states. Florida still dealing with a bit of tropical moisture there. Pretty quiet, though, out west, which is a nice change. There's just one system coming into the Pacific Northwest as we speak. But looking again at those New England communities, you can see a lot of the rain is just now pushing over the Atlantic. So it really is just the coast that's dealing with some lingering showers, rumbles of thunder, as well as the cloud cover. Keeping up with the tropics, we mentioned this yesterday for the first time, new tropical storm Jerry. It developed yesterday from a tropical wave to that tropical storm. It is still at tropical storm status, winds of 60 miles per hour. And notice, in the next couple of days, it's going to get really close to those leeward islands, including the U.S. Virgin Islands, before starting to make its direction up towards the north and then eventually northeast. Now, this is actually forecast, at least right now, to stay south of Bermuda. Remember, last week they were impacted by 2 separate tropical storms and hurricanes. So this one looks like it may end up staying just off towards the south and the east, but we'll have to watch those islands again later Thursday on into Friday for some impacts there. And even the East Coast, even though it's forecast to stay pretty far out east, could end up seeing some higher waves and some of that rough surf. Now, we mentioned this earlier in the show. In the next couple of days, especially towards Friday, there could be a storm system developing right off the coast of Florida that becomes a nor'easter. So this is taking you all the way into early Saturday. You can see the development there around the Atlantic, but then how it continues to move up the coast. Now, these nor'easters are pretty big storms, so they're extratropical. They're not technically tropical, but they bring in really heavy rainfall as well as high wind, and they're really a coastal headache for the East Coast, specifically nor'easter. And a lot of times this brings in snow during those cold months, but thankfully it's not going to be that cold. But the East Coast, again, starting Saturday on into Sunday, will be likely dealing with some high winds as well as some pretty heavy rainfall and just flooding, which they've already dealt with a lot, especially the Outer Banks. Again, there have been a handful of tropical systems that have stayed off coast, but have still brought some pretty big impacts. So something that, even though we're way out towards the west, we'll of course be watching in the weather world. Nor'easters are always very fascinating to watch from a distance. Now, back closer to home, our biggest weather story was the chill this morning. Upper 20s was the low in Rhinelander, 27 to be more specific, and the rest of us were in the 30s and the 40s. And now right now we're in the 50s, including up north in Rhinelander, so warming pretty slowly. We may make it to 60 in Milwaukee, but a lot of other spots up north will remain in the 50s for high temperatures today. So it's a cool one. Just as cool for tonight, although maybe not upper 20s up north, more so looking at temperatures around freezing, and then maybe mid 60s for southern Wisconsin tomorrow, low 60s up towards the north. So we've got a pair of some cooler days ahead. And temperatures, though, out west already back to 70s. They dealt with some of this cooler air the past couple of days. So that just tells us, even though today, tomorrow's cooler than average, we will eventually get back to some of those upper 60s as well as low 70s. In fact, here's the temperature trend over the next 6 days. Notice by Friday with the southwest wind, we'll be right back to about 70, and the weekend still looks lovely. So a couple of cooler than average days and then jumping right back to where we should be this time of year.
Yeah, and it looks great for this time of year. Florida looks great too, but don't forget that nearly 1 year ago, Hurricane Milton battered Florida. But today, near Tampa, they are exploring ways to protect the community before the next storm arrives. They're hosting a post-disaster redevelopment plan community meeting. The goal of the meeting is to share ideas, strategies, and goals to make areas more disaster resilient.
It's one of the important things, always going back and studying what happened, what we can do better in the future.
I agree.
Well, here's something you need to see to believe. An analysis by Fox Weather shows there have been more forecast cones touching Arizona than Florida this year, and that's tropical related, as you can see. So those cones are created by the National Hurricane Center and show the possible track of tropical weather. Arizona has had 6 cones touch the state in forecast this year, while Florida has only had 3.
Wow.
The Pacific has been way hotter than the Atlantic when it comes to these storms, but remember, the Atlantic hurricane season, it continues until November, so sadly there is still time.
Yeah, we'll have to watch that, especially since the Pacific season starts earlier. But, you know, we've been tracking those systems. You mentioned Jerry, you mentioned some of those other systems moving in. We'll be keeping a close eye on the Atlantic season. Well, we're continuing to take advantage, maybe of going down to the lake while Lake Michigan is still warm before winter arrives, and now isn't a bad time, considering the lake is the warmest on record. Our chief meteorologist, Tom Walks, shares more.
Well, we have had a warm stretch of weather across the region, especially last week in Milwaukee when we hit a record high temperature. Well, now we're starting to cool things down, but it's not only the land that warmed up, it's also the Lake Michigan water temperature. Now, this is a graph from NOAA, and you'll notice it starts out in January here when the waters are very cold, and then of course it takes a while for the lake water to heat up, right? The land heats up much faster than the water does. So usually we don't reach our peak heating in Lake Michigan until the August time frame. And I know you see a lot of lines on here, so I'm going to zoom this in and let me break this down for you a little bit. So the red line that you see here, that is the warmest year on record, which, by the way, that dates back to 1995 when records for Lake Michigan water temperatures started being kept. 2023, that was the warmest year on record, and that's, again, the red line that you see here. Now, as we look at the gray line, you see that gray line right there, that's the average water temperature, and all of the kind of faded lines, that's every year in between going back down to 1995. The green line, that's going to be the coldest on record. That was in 2003. Now, you'll notice another line on here. See the orange line? That's our current year of 2025. So you'll notice a couple of things. Number one, you see how it stops right here because that's the current time frame for us. It is above, slightly above, the warmest year on record, which was 2023. Let me step out of the way so you can see the temperatures there on the right-hand side. So our average water temperature right now is 67 degrees, which is well above average. But I also want you to take a look at another factor here on the map, which is, you'll notice in 2023, we had that sharp drop. And you'll notice it's a little more of a gradual drop when you average everything together, but even on the coldest year on record, we saw a pretty steep drop here. And that's usually an indicator that you get those big fronts that come in during October. For us, we're expecting that big front to come in sometime around October 18th. Now, it still takes a while for the water to cool down versus the land, right? The land will cool down right away, but it's this time of year when we typically start to see that big temperature drop. So just to recap here, as of right now, warmest water on record, which dates back to 1995. Current temperature, again, that's the average temperature of the lake, is 67. There are some spots that have been 68 to 69 degrees this week. The average water temperature is 60. But again, we typically start this big temperature drop this time of year when we get those cool air masses coming down from Canada. So bottom line is this. Well, it has certainly been very warm and record warm lake water temperatures. Don't expect it to last. By later this month, as we get that cold air really coming in, we're going to really start to see that water temperature go down.
This is great stuff.
It is. It's fascinating. The lake is just so integral into our weather here in Milwaukee and southeast Wisconsin. So it's fascinating to keep up with those stats.
Yeah, we're going to have to watch it. You know, 67 degrees might not sound that warm, but it is.
But it is.
We're going to have a lot more coming up after the break, especially Stephanie, who had a special interview with the Wisconsin DNR. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Wisconsin Weather Experts, everybody. I'm excited for this one. I had the opportunity to sit down with a bird specialist. So dropping temperatures, beautiful fall foliage, we know are both signs of fall. And you may have noticed an increase in birds flying throughout the area. So October is part of a big migration period for birds in Wisconsin going down south. And there are actually some ways that we can help those birds as they migrate. I had the opportunity to talk with Ryan Brady. He is a bird conservation biologist with the Wisconsin DNR. He's based up in Ashland on this topic. And let me tell you, he is very passionate. Take a look.
Is October a big migration month for Wisconsin?
It's a big month. Fall migration lasts a long time in Wisconsin, so it gets started, believe it or not, in July.
Oh, wow,
and
okay.
will kind of ramp up through August, hits its peak in September, and then still going pretty strong in October, but past peak. And it'll go all the way until the snow and the ice, really take a firm grip all the way even to the end of December, depending on what kind of winter onset we have.
I've seen a lot about the turning lights off at night to help birds that are migrating. Is that something that we should be doing? Is it beneficial to birds?
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of our birds migrate at night. And even though there are some that migrate during the day, most of them are winging their way overhead while we're all sleeping. And when they do that, obviously they're not seeing really well. And they're using a variety of cues to migrate south, stars, magnetic fields. In some cases, maybe there's some landforms being used. That's especially during the day. But lights can be disorienting. It attracts them at night when they shouldn't be attracted to these places. It confuses them. And then in the process of being confused, it makes them vulnerable to collisions with the windows in many of these buildings. So you might hear of something called lights out initiatives, which are, hey, everybody, it's a big migration night. Let's get our lights out off from, say, 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. or some sort of period covering darkness. You could also use motion sensors, which would help kind of reduce the amount of light activity to just when you need it. And then if you have to leave lights on, then the best thing you can do is get lights that are shielded and downward facing, because those would be the least disorienting.
Is there a way for us to know if there's a really big migration happening at a certain period of time?
Yeah, there is. So many of these birds will kind of cue into certain environmental features that will trigger them to migrate. And that will occur during the proper window, right? So maybe, like I said, August, September, October. And so when they're in that window in the fall, what they're looking for is a nice tailwind. Usually there's a rising pressure. So maybe a northwest wind, rising pressure, drier air, clearing skies, so they can use those stars for navigation. And as you know, that often will come after the passage of a cold front. So if you're a bird watcher, you're kind of looking for when those cold fronts are going to sweep through. And on the back side of that is when you're going to see these big nights of migration. And then while it's happening, and you've probably seen this as well, but you can see it on radar. And that's been really popular among, many people, but especially meteorologists, I noticed of late, posting a lot of that stuff. And it's just fascinating to see hundreds of millions of birds, show up on radar. But now there's something that simplifies it, and there's something called Birdcast. And if you go to Birdcast, they take weather data and combine it with kind of time of year bird information to make predictions about, hey, here's what it looks like over the next 3 nights. The upper Midwest is a hot spot, or the Northeast is a hot spot, or the Southeast, and it'll make some bold predictions.
Why do you find so many people that just love to go to certain areas and watch these birds?
Birds are just kind of easy to love. There's a lot of them, and they're wherever you go, right? And then there's different varieties. Many of them are colorful. Many of them sing these beautiful songs. So a lot of people are really connecting with birds through that kind of auditory experience in the spring and summer, when you start to open your windows and the robins are coming back, or the blackbirds, or maybe hearing the cranes over the marsh, something like that. I think that really gives some level of connectivity. And in a way, people treat birding a little bit like a treasure hunt, different ones in different places, and birders can keep lots of lists and look for patterns. And there's just a lot to like about birds, I think, and the fact that they're so readily accessible compared to many other organisms. And now with technology really growing, it's, I think, increasing people's ability to connect with birds. And so if you look at, in particular, some of the apps that are available that identify bird songs, so you can just put an app on your phone. One example, it's called Merlin. And you walk around with it and it's telling you what birds you're hearing. It's like having a mentor right there, or an expert right there with you. And that's kind of opened people's eyes and ears to what was once unknown, and now feeling like they have some understanding of what's around them. And the more we kind of get comfortable with and understand what's around us, the more we start to care about it. And then once you learn many of the common birds in your neighborhood or in your park, or wherever you may frequent, then you can start to understand, oh, well, that one's different. And you start paying attention to the other ones. And pretty soon you're developing a real body of knowledge, and you find yourself a birder.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wisconsin Weather Experts on this Wednesday. Thanks for listening to my awesome bird with Ryan, my interview with Ryan.
Yeah.
He's fantastic and awesome, so thank you and shout out to him for talking.
And hopefully you'll give us more of that interview later on with some other stuff coming up this year. Well, speaking of things coming up this year, we haven't even made it to Halloween yet, but some areas already putting up Christmas trees. Ready or not, a giant tree has appeared in Pittsburgh's downtown plaza. Many argue it's too early, but the reason, it's not because they're trying to make it earlier to display Christmas cheer. It has to go up before the ice rink goes in.
Okay.
So there's at least a reason for this. The opening day of that ice rink is in November.
Wow, talk about winter vibes right there. I love it. Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of Wisconsin Weather Experts. Live Desk is up next.